So early on a November morning, I decided to take my lovely wife out for our early anniversary and wanted to do something a little bit different. There was this shop that I've seen on the internet called the Original 151, and it was a Pokemon import shop, things that you couldn't just find in stores around the United States here. And we both decided, well, this sounds really cool. Why don't we try going sometime? The trip from Cleveland, Ohio, all the way down south to the Columbus, Dayton, Ohio area is very boring. There is nothing to do except look at the hills, look at the trees, and occasionally you'll see a sign for Grandpa's Cheese Barn or an adult mart.
Honey, the adult mart.
I know, it's a true Ohio experience.
Now we just have to wait for another Hell Israel sign.
If you're not from the Ohio area, Adult Mart is kind of a big thing around here. You can't go down any major stretch of highway without at least passing 1 or 2 signs for an Adult Mart. And as I mentioned, there are signs for Grandpa's Cheese Barn, which is another place I've never gone, but for an entirely different reason. I'm severely lactose intolerant, and just the thought of a Grandpa's Cheese Barn makes me feel like I have to die. Eventually, we made it to the Fairfield Commons Mall, which is actually a pretty interesting mall, all things considered. We have a mall around where my wife grew up that is just dead and disgusting. And a couple of the other malls here within like a 40-minute range of us are all dead and disgusting. So it was actually quite interesting to see a mall that had something going for it. The first stop of our trip was the aforementioned Original 151. And this shop, it is a Pokemon nerd's paradise. There are things that I could only have imagined having when I was in my younger days and cared more about collecting things with Pokemon. They had a lot of things that I would have loved to have collected. Food dishes and plates and giant large stuffed Lucario that I saw a man grab by the groin and lift off the shelf. It was one of the life-size figures, and there was the only one in the store, and I saw a man take it. It was quite interesting, to say the least. There are places you can measure yourself to see how you stack up against a Pokemon's actual size. My wife was just a little bit taller than a Gengar, and turns out I'm just a little bit bigger than a Charizard. Eventually, we decided on a couple things to purchase. I picked out a model kit for Lugia, the mascot of Pokemon Silver. My wife picked out a model kit for Mimikyu. They seem easy in comparison of something like a Gundam, which is something I'm incredibly used to building, so it's going to be a nice change of pace. We also each picked out a little stuffed plushie to keep in the studio. I picked out a Licky Licky based off of Mr. Slurp, my lovely, lovely mascot. He's real cute. And my wife picked out Toxel, the cute little baby poison Pokemon that we both fell in love with in Sword and Shield.
He has a butthole.
Apparently he also has a butthole, which is... The public needs to know. I also picked out a cute little Appleton figure because he looked really cute, and I love Appleton more than I think most people would understand. He turns into a pie. That's just awesome. We also played with the Pokemon Gachapon machine. Now this, I will say, was maybe the one thing I wasn't super enthralled about. You had to actually purchase the tokens, and the tokens were about $7 after tax. So for 2 tokens, but it was still really fun. And my wife picked out the machine that had the seasonal Pokemon figures, and I picked out the ones that had the more squishable, tactile vinyl figures. My prize turned out to be a vinyl Chimchar figure, which, in my opinion, is my least favorite starter, and my wife got a Halloween-themed Toxel. It was a big day for purple poison types in this family. After that, we walked a little bit further and ended up at Round 1. Now, this is an arcade that I have heard of fairly frequently from a fellow YouTuber, Brutal Moose, and I figured, you know what? What the heck? Let's just stop inside, cash a few credits, and see if we can win anything. The thing that was most interesting to me is just the sheer number of anime-inspired prizes in these kinds of machines. I know they're a big arcade company in Japan, but I didn't expect them to have as many mainstream figures. The first machine that we sat down and played had a plush figure of Nobara from Jujutsu Kaisen. Really wanted to get that one. We almost got it too, and after consecutive attempts of continuing to hit it in the wrong spot, I think it just got stuck. We tried our hardest, walked away from that one with nothing. After that, we tried our hand at one of the UFO crane games where you had to like scoop under a box and scoot it from the smaller part of two metal rods into a wider part to try and get it to fall through. This figure specifically was one that my wife and I were both interested in. It was Le Millionaire from My Hero Academia. Unfortunately, we didn't get it going very far, and again, I think we got it stuck to the point where it would have taken us more credits than I was willing to dump into the machine to get it to come loose. To round off our trip into round one, my wife decided to sit down and play a couple rounds at Marble Carnival. It plays very much like one of those coin drop games. You drop marbles, you try and drop them in at the right time to push other marbles off. There's also cards, where if you collect all 9 of them, I think it was, you get a jackpot bonus. I don't know how many tickets we walked away with, and at this point, it really didn't matter because we had fun and got to experience an arcade that wasn't just something like a main event. Round 1 is a well-rounded experience in my book. After a quick escalator ride up to the second floor, we entered into a second import store, this one called Nani. Instead of focusing on just one thing like Pokémon in the original 151, this store focused on multiple different kinds of anime. There was a giant Ultra Instinct Goku statue as you walked into the room. It was still sporting a witch's hat, because it was just Halloween. There were statues for Yu-Gi-Oh!, there were statues for One Piece. Jujutsu Kaisen had a massive showing in terms of figures. There were a bunch of Gundam figures. Something that I really thought was cool, especially to me, was there were a bunch of the Digimon Gundam style figures that you build. They had anime playing in the room. I can see myself coming back, making that 3-hour drive again, just to revisit Nani, Round 1, and Original 151, if for no other reason. Towards the middle of our trip, we decided to get some food because our tummies were rumblier than Winnie the Pooh. There's no end to that joke. Because of the dietary restrictions with myself, we decided to eat someplace that was more certified, dairy-free, allergen-friendly. Fusion was the place we came up with. They do build your own sushi rolls, build your own sushi bowls, different things like that. I had a coconut curry bowl with chicken, and my wife had a build your own salmon bowl, and both of them were pretty pleasant. And now we're getting to a part of the trip that I didn't get to film too much of. We went to it felt like a seedier side of town. It wasn't necessarily, but it just kind of had that vibe to it, and I didn't feel comfortable whipping out the phone or my camera in a place where the shops were maybe super narrow and really not the places that you'd want someone to have a camera or a backpack and film. The first store we went into was called GameSwap. It was this neat little store that had a bunch of retro games, retro arcade cabinets that you could play on, some modern games, a lot of action figures and old toys, things like the original Transformers, VHS tapes, DVD players. They were playing Saved by the Bell on TV. I went in there not expecting to find too much. The retro game scene has kind of gotten to the point for me where a lot of the things I really want are too niche and too expensive, but I did find 2 nice little games that I've been looking to add to my collection whenever I could find them for a good enough price. Both in very good condition, I picked up Oddworld Abe's Odyssey and Oddworld Abe's Exodus. I'm not the kind of person that really cares about the green greatest hits on the side of a game, but seeing Abe's Exodus in one of those beautiful double jewel cases for 2-disc games, I don't know, I just really like those kinds of cases, so for me that was a big bonus. I didn't even know it came in a case like that. I was pretty happy with that. And then finally, to round off the trip, we went into a card and comic store. Again, didn't film anything in there. That one specifically was very crowded. But one of the cool things I saw that I would love to point out was a very good looking set of the Topps Pokemon trading cards. Not the original Pokemon cards that a bunch of us grew up with, but the really full shiny, full art Topps trading cards. And another really cool thing I found was a full set of the original Beast Wars Transformers. Beast Wars just so happens to be my favorite of the Transformers series, with Armada coming in a close second, and they had a couple still in package Armada figures for about $20 a pop. Thought about getting one. Again, didn't necessarily want to spend the money for it, but it was just really cool to see something like that there. Overall, for a 3-hour trip each direction, totaling 6 hours of the day, spending about 4 hours there, I had a lot of fun. And I know my wife had a good time as well. Honest to God, seeing her face wandering around the store in original 151, just lighting up at all the figures and all the Pokemon-ness of everything was really great to see, and I'm glad I got to do something like that and experience that with my best friend. So that was the end of our trip to Fairfield Commons. 6 hours both direction, wouldn't trade it for anything. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever been to the original 151, Nani, or Round 1, or the mall at Fairfield Commons, and what your thoughts were on it. I can say without a doubt that it was one of the most fun experiences I've ever done on a road trip. Thanks for watching, and I still don't know how to end videos.